Structure decks are supposed to be the easy to obtain core building blocks to making a competent competitive deck right out of the box. Sure, you can add a few power cards, meta staples, or tech options here and there, but the main concept is that they're tailor-made to be competitively viable and provide a player with a solid and found strategy, such as the case in recent years with powerhouses like the Albash Strike, Soulburner, and Shadow Showdown structure decks. Sure, we've had some duds like Freezing Chains and Spirit Charmers, but for the most part since Arc V, Konami has really stepped up their game and brought the player base slam dunk after slam dunk. See Dino Masher's Fury, Emperor of Darkness, Hero Strike, and Structure Deck Kaiba 2016 as more examples. I've often seen the question asked online, what is the best Yu-Gi-Oh! Structure deck of all time? And while I wouldn't fault you for believing that the answer is among the ones that I've mentioned, or even maybe one that I didn't, like Order of the Spellcasters, what if I told you you were way off, and that the correct answer wasn't just one that most TCG duelists wouldn't know, but it was one that most of us in the TCG never even got a chance to play. I've really been looking forward to shining some light on what I believe is easily one of the most impressive Yu-Gi-Oh! Products of all time, and in this video, I'll teach you all about it. You'll of course get a breakdown of this legendary structure deck, the absolute juggernauts held within it, and the impact it made on the competitive metagame. This video is about the rarely discussed and little known 2002 structure deck Kaiba. Some of you might immediately think, wait a second Cap, Kaiba 2002? I remember that starter deck, I even had one. And while you're close, you're still a fair bit off. You're thinking of the TCG's iconic starter deck Kaiba, which premiered in March 2002 and was superb for its time. I personally know this because as a 16-year-old, it was actually the first Yu-Gi-Oh! Product I wanted to buy to start the process of deck building at the beginning of my Yu-Gi-Oh! Journey. That product aside, what we're actually looking at launched at basically the same time, but for the other side of the world, January 24th, 2002 in Japan to be exact. This was the day that Konami would drop one of the most significant products in OCG history. One thing you need to know from the jump is that OCG structure decks were far more impressive than the TCG starter deck counterparts that we received during DM. Same exact 4 characters of Yugi, Kaiba, Pegasus, and Jinochi, but the Japanese counterparts were designed with the idea of players being able to build strong decks for contending at their local tournaments, as opposed to the starter decks, which yes included some powerful cards like Joey's Scapegoat and Graceful Charity for Pegasus, but overall the starter decks were made for duelists just learning how to play the game. It only included 2 or so really potent cards. The Kaiba structure was the 3rd one released in the OCG and came with some fairly high expectations. Following Joey wasn't that big of a deal, although I'll note that structure deck Jinochi did feature some powerhouses like Jinzo, Witch of the Black Forest, Pot of Greed, and Call of the Haunted. It was actually Yugi who set the stage for just how good these products would be and what players could expect. Structure deck Yugi featured Dark Magician Girl, Cyberjar, Mirror Force, Monster Reborn, MST, Magic Cylinder, and much more. What's really awesome about these structure decks is just how well Konami perfectly nailed each character. Seto Kaiba once said, "I've never settled for mediocrity as an acceptable standard and neither should you," and his structure deck Kaiba 2002 exemplified this to a T. While the Yugi and Joey structures were amazing and totally well worth the money in their own rights, Kaiba raised the standard to an absolutely absurd level very few products have ever reached. I'll be sure to have the full 50 card breakdown on screen the best that I can, but just look at this juggernaut. Right off the top, it came standard with not 1, not 2, but 3 copies of its legendary Blue Eyes White Dragon. These Blue Eyes were in 3 different languages also, Chinese, Japanese, and Asian English. For those not in the know, Blue Eyes was the ultra rare cover card for our starter deck Kaiba, and you only received 1 copy. While on the subject of solid vanilla beaters, structure deck Kaiba also came with a copy of the 1900 attack Vorse Raider, which in my opinion was a nice touch. The Kaiba structure deck didn't slack when it came to new monsters either. This deck gave birth to the fairly niche Kaiser Seahorse, which of course made summoning said Blue Eyes White Dragons much easier. But more importantly, the Kaiba structure deck gave the OCG world the incredibly deadly Vampire Lord. I've already made a full dedicated video to Vampire Lord and how this monstrosity absolutely rampaged the OCG's metagame with its never seen before self-reviving effect. Small spoiler, at one point it actually surpassed Jinzo and reached the #1 spot as best tribute in their metagame. 3 Blue Eyes Force Raider and a new tribute monster that was about to instantly see competitive play probably would have been enough to satisfy duelists. But Konami also included 2 copies of the competitive staple Sangan, a Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, and in an utterly ridiculous move, also a copy of Cyberstein. So technically, you never actually needed to use any of those Blue Eyes or Polymerization, which was also included in here. You could just summon Stein and there was your easy button to Blue Eyes Ultimate. If you've ever seen any of my OCG videos that take place during the DM era, you're well aware of how often I bring up Devil Frankenstein and the carnage this card caused. Being able to get one standard from a $10 structure deck when it premiered as a Shonen Jump prize card for the TCG is mind-blowing. By the way, that's not the only Shonen Jump prize card in this structure deck. The spells were also phenomenal as well. Heavy Storm, Monster Reborn, Premature Burial, Snatch Steel, Dark Hole, and Graceful Charity were all included. And as you can imagine, each fell under the category of meta staple. Now players could get them all in one place. For some outside of the box but still excellent picks, duelists were presented with Tribute to the Doom, which I've also done a full OCG video on, Megamorph, which was imperative and necessary for some Cyberstein powered OTKs that could let you take Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon to 9,000 attack, and a pair of powerful Nobleman cards, Crossout and Extermination. These cards were both fairly strong but also very format dependent. For example, in formats where flip monsters were prevalent, Crossout shined. Looking at things rationally, with such a loaded monster and spell lineup, you'd assume that maybe the traps would fall off a cliff and be fairly bad, right? Wrong. Konami clearly wanted this product to be representative of Kaiba as a character and to fully display his strength and dominance. That's why they included 2 of the most powerful traps in the entire game at the time, with Ring of Destruction and the horrifying Crush Card Virus. Just about anyone who's played during DM, GX, or even retroactively, like a GOAT format duel, knows how insane the old pre-errated version of Ring of Destruction is, especially the super degenerate, but if I'm being honest, super fun plays of attacking with a monster then immediately ringing it for double damage. With that said, however, Crush Card Virus was arguably stronger and meta-warping at times. Much like Cyberstein, this card premiered in the TCG as a Shonen Jump prize card and would routinely fetch an asking price of $2,000. OCG duelists were able to get this highly desired reprint as a guaranteed common in a $10 product. Some of the last remaining cards I would assume were intended to be filler, but there were even some notable picks there. Cards like Lord of D and Flute of Summoning Dragon clearly fell into iconic Seto Kaiba cards, and ones like Needleworm and Morphing Jar No. 2, which in my opinion were pretty random, at the same time were cards that were insanely difficult to obtain in the TCG, being tournament pack ultra rares that cost about $100 per copy minimum. I should also point out that during DM, deck out was actually a viable competitive strategy in the OCG, so these random cards were ironically superstars in their own right. In total, out of the 50 cards in this structure deck, 15 would appear on the Forbidden and Limited list at some point in time, which is absurdly about 1 in 3. Structure Deck Kaiba presented earth-shattering new competitive cards like Vampire Lord, meta staples galore, highly desired reprints like Crush Card Virus and Cyberstein, and even the random stuff like the deck milling cards Needleworm and Morphing Jar No. 2 were competitively viable in their own deck. For my money, this is the best structure deck of all time by a sizable margin, not just in terms of sheer power, but also value. Clearly this product lived up to the Kaiba name, and more importantly, the Kaiba standard. And with that, we are at the conclusion to this Yu-Gi-Oh video. If you enjoyed it, or more importantly, you learned something, give the video a big thumbs up and let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Also, check out some of the other videos that I'm sure are on your screen right now. Thanks for watching. And then, of course, a gigantic thank you to my patrons. We could not do this without you. My old buddy and rival, Garen Williams, Brian Ford, Volnuff, Israel Diaz, Ernesto Sanchez, and then my Twitch crew, Akinasism, Big Pimpin', and Super Canadian. If you'd like to become a patron or learn more, of course, the link is in the description below.